Okay, so real quickly, we're going to have a review of nonfiction text structures. I'm going to use some task cards today that we have not seen before, but are written in nonfiction, so they're realistic stories that we can use to help us identify and understand nonfiction text structure. So, the first task card that we are going to do, the question asks us, identify the text structure being used. Well, in order to identify this particular text structure, we have to read the text structure. We have to read the passage. And so it says building a campfire. Sitting around a campfire is a classic summer camping tradition. Before you can tell stories, though, you will need to build your fire. Begin by gathering firewood from around your camp. In addition to the wood, you will need other tinder like pine needles, bark, or dead plants to help you ignite the fire. Then dig a small pit for your fire and build a ring of stone around it for maximum safety. Place your wood and tinder into the pit and start the fire using an ignition. Place your wood and tinder into the pit and start the fire using an ignition source such as a match. Once ignited, slightly blow on your flame to build heat. When you have a flame, use large pieces of firewood to build a teepee. Now sit back and relax in front of your roaring fire. Well, this passage is written in a way that they are giving you steps to do something. So the steps they're trying to give you are to build a campfire. Okay? So let's look and see if we can identify some of the key words that may be used. Well, some words I immediately see that would let me know what type of text structure this is would be the word before. Begin. In addition to. Then. Once. Now. Now these words all are keywords or signal words for a sequence paragraph. And sequence paragraphs tell us step by step how to do something. They tell us from beginning to end. And in this passage, they are telling us from the beginning to the very end how to build a campfire so that you can enjoy it while you're on a camping trip. So here we're going to identify the text structure used. The text structure being used is a sequence. Now, circle 3 words that give you a clue about the type of text structure being used. Well, we've already identified several keywords that help us identify: before, begin, in addition to, then, and now. The third task they ask us to complete is use the context clues to write a definition for the word tender. Well, let's go back to our passage and see if we can identify the word tender. Well, the word tender is found here, and it's in italics. Now, let's remember that oftentimes when we see words that need to be defined or may be important, they will be in italics or bolded. They'll be written in a different way than the rest of the text and that lets us know that we need to define it or we need to remember that particular word. So, using our context clues, let's decide what the word tender means. Well, let's think of some of our context clue rules. So, one of the first context clue rules that we need to remember is the word defined immediately after it's being used? Well, let's look. Tinder, like pine needles, bark, or dead plants to help ignite the fire. Well, do we see anything that helps us realize what the word tender? Immediately after the word tender, it says like pine needles, bark, or dead plants. That doesn't exactly clear up what the word tender means. Is it restated? Or do they give us an idea of a synonym or an antonym? Well, in the sentence where the word tender is being used, I don't see where it gives us a clear depiction of a synonym. However, they do say to help ignite the fire. So, I wonder if we could use some other context clues to define it using ignite the fire. Well, are they giving it to us, giving us a definition before the word tender or after the word tender in the sentence? Well, in the sentence immediately after the word tender, it says, then dig a small pit for your fire and build a ring of stone around it for maximum safety. So they do not define the word tender within that sentence. And in the sentence before the word tender, begin by gathering firewood from around your camp. So here, they don't tell us exactly what it means. But I think in the sentence with the word tender, it says to ignite a fire. So tender would be something used to ignite a fire. And we come up with that conclusion by inferring that we're using pine needles, bark, or dead plants to help ignite the fire. So the word tender would mean materials used to ignite a fire. And we're basing our definition of tender off of the fact that we see materials, pine needles, bark, or dead plants. These are all materials found in the woods to help ignite the fire. And they say exactly that, tender, like pine needles, bark, or dead plants to help ignite the fire. Now, the task card is asking us to underline the sentence that tells you what to do as soon as your fire is lit. Well, let's look. Remember, we said we are reading a sequence paragraph. And so therefore, we need to find where we most likely would talk about lighting the fire. Well, here we're talking about finding tinder. Then we need to build a pit for our fire. And then we need to place our wood and tinder into the pit. Once it is ignited, place your wood and tinder into the pit and start the fire using ignition. Well, our question asks us underline a sentence that tells you what to do as soon as your fire is lit. Well, let's keep reading. Using a match, we would light the fire, and once it's ignited, slightly blow on your flame to build the heat. Is the word ignited the same as saying once it's lit? Well, yes, it is. We know that ignition for a fire means to light it up. So what do the paragraphs tell us to do after our fire is lit? It tells us to blow on your flame to build the heat. So, once you have completed each one of the text structure task cards, just as you've seen me complete here, please turn them into your grade level baskets for a grade.